everything. Have you ever felt that burning desire to change your life, yet found yourself frozen scrolling, doubting, delaying? You promise, tomorrow I'll start. But tomorrow never comes. Everything. The truth is, motivation doesn't start action. Action creates motivation. This audiobook isn't about waiting for inspiration. Everything. It's about forcing yourself to move when every part of you wants to stay still. It's about building momentum from nothing, breaking through resistance. Everything. And taking control of your destiny. Not someday, but now. If you've ever been stuck in hesitation, this is your wake-up call. Let's unlock the psychology, the strategy, everything, and the inner fire that makes you unstoppable. There's a moment, quiet but unmistakable, when you know what you should do and yet you don't move. You feel the pull of action, everything that whispered telling you to start, to go, to change something right now. But then another voice rises, softer, more persuasive. It says, not now. You're tired. You'll do it later. Everything. Wait until it feels right. And so you stay where you are, still, frozen, caught in a silent tug of war between the person you are and the person you could be. This is the war within. Everything. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself with drama or noise. It's quiet. So quiet that most people never even realize it's happening. Everything. But it's there every morning when you hit snooze instead of getting up. It's there when you plan, overthink, and endlessly prepare, instead of taking that single, everything, imperfect step forward. It's the battle between intention and execution, between desire and discipline. You tell yourself you'll start once you're motivated, once you feel ready, everything. But readiness is a myth and motivation is a liar. The truth is, the longer you wait for the perfect moment, the more power you give to hesitation, everything. Because hesitation is not harmless. It's a habit. Every time you choose delay, you're training your mind to prioritize comfort over growth. And comfort, though it feels safe, everything, is a trap disguised as peace. Let's go deeper. Why don't you take action even when you know it's good for you? The answer lies not in laziness but in fear. Fear of failure, everything. Fear of rejection, fear of wasting effort. Sometimes it's even fear of success, because success means change, and change threatens the familiar rhythm of your life. You might say, everything. I want to start a business, or I want to get in shape, but beneath those words your subconscious whispers, what if I fail? Everything. What if I'm not enough? So you stay where you are, convincing yourself that waiting is wise, when in truth it's just safer. Imagine standing at the edge of a pool, everything, the water cold and still. You know that once you jump in, your body will adjust, you'll find your rhythm, and it will even start to feel good, everything. But that first contact with the cold, it's enough to make most people step back. The irony is, the hardest part is not swimming, it's jumping in. That's what action feels like. Everything, the first step always stings, but once you're in motion, momentum takes over. Everything. The war within isn't about whether you can act, it's about whether you'll cross that invisible line between thought and motion. Everything. Psychologists call this activation energy, the energy it takes to begin. It's the same principle that governs everything from chemistry to creativity. The hardest part is starting. Everything. But once a reaction begins, it feeds itself. The key is to lower the barrier to start, not raise it with perfectionism. Think about the last time you procrastinated. Everything. You might have told yourself, I'll start when I feel inspired. But inspiration never came, did it? Because inspiration doesn't precede action. It follows it. The moment you begin, everything, even in the smallest way, your brain starts to release dopamine, that chemical of progress and reward. You begin to feel capable, confident. Action creates emotion. Everything, not the other way around. But we live in a culture that worships comfort. Everything is designed to make life easier. Instant delivery, entertainment on demand, everything. Algorithms that predict what you want before you even ask. Ease feels good, but it slowly erodes our capacity for effort. When everything comes without struggle, everything, our threshold for discomfort drops. The smallest challenge feels unbearable. So when it's time to push, to grow, to act, the mind resists. It says, everything. Why suffer? But it's that very discomfort that builds strength. Picture an athlete in training. Every repetition burns, every second of strain feels like resistance. Everything. Yet it's that resistance that breaks muscle fibers, allowing them to grow back stronger. Without resistance, there is no growth. The same law applies to your willpower. Everything. Every time you choose the hard thing, you build mental muscle. Every time you avoid it, you weaken that inner strength. Now, some people say, everything. I'm just not disciplined. But discipline isn't a personality trait, it's a muscle, and muscles grow with use. The first few reps are always the hardest. For example, waking up early might feel impossible at first. But if you do it for 3 days in a row, then 5, then 10, your body adapts. The resistance lessens, the act becomes automatic. What was once hard becomes normal. That's how internal battles are won, one small victory at a time. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear: you will never feel fully ready. Not once. Every person you admire, every achiever, every builder, every door, they all began before they felt prepared. They didn't wait for confidence. They acted their way into confidence. You build courage through repetition, not reflection. A friend of mine once told me a story about a painter he knew. The painter would sit for hours staring at a blank canvas, sketching plans, adjusting the light, choosing colors, but never painting. When asked why, he said, I'm waiting for the vision to feel complete. Years passed, and his studio filled with unfinished canvases. One day, a younger artist visited and asked, How do you get so much done? The older man laughed, realizing that while he had been perfecting his ideas, the younger one had been perfecting his craft. The difference was simple. One painted, the other planned. That's what most of us do with our lives. We confuse preparation with progress. We think researching, organizing, or visualizing is movement, when in reality, it's just motion without direction. True action begins when we cross from thought into doing. When the brush touches the canvas, the words hit the page, the body starts moving. And yet, there's one more trap, the illusion of the right time. How many dreams have died under that phrase? You say, I'll start when things settle down, or when I have more money, or when I feel less anxious. But life never settles completely. There's always noise, always chaos, always a reason to wait. The perfect time is not coming, because you are what makes the time right. The conditions won't change until you do. You see, your mind craves certainty, It wants guarantees before it risks effort. But action requires faith that even without all the answers, you'll learn as you go. Every great change in history started with someone who didn't know what would happen next, but acted anyway. That's what courage is, not the absence of fear, but movement in spite of it. When you delay action, you're not just postponing progress. You're reinforcing the habit of avoidance. And avoidance compounds. What starts as one skipped workout, one delayed project, one avoided conversation, slowly grows into a pattern of inaction that shapes your identity. You start to see yourself as someone who never finishes, someone who just can't stay consistent. And the longer you live inside that identity, the harder it becomes to break free. But the moment you act, no matter how small, you begin to rewrite that story. Every time you choose movement over hesitation, you send a signal to your brain, I'm the kind of person who follows through. That's how identity shifts, one choice at a time. Maybe right now you're thinking about something you've wanted to do for a long time. Write a book, start a business, change your body, rebuild a relationship, You've thought about it so much that the thought itself has become exhausting. But here's what I want you to know: the thinking part will never feel complete. Because thought without action has no end. The moment you take the first step, even if it's clumsy or unclear, clarity follows. The fog doesn't lift before you move, it lifts because you move. When you understand that, procrastination loses its power. You begin to see it not as a personal flaw, but as a psychological pattern you can break. The war within becomes visible, and once you can see it, you can win it. So, the next time that quiet hesitation whispers, not now, I want you to pause and ask, what am I really afraid of? Don't let the feeling decide for you. Fear is just your mind's way of testing your commitment. Let it speak, but don't let it stop you. Because deep down, you already know the truth: you were never meant to live in pause. You were meant to move, to act, to create. The war within may never disappear completely, but with every step you take, you'll hear that inner noise grow quieter, until one day, action is no longer a battle. It's simply who you are. There comes a moment in every person's life when hesitation quietly becomes a habit. You know that thing you should do, start the project, end the bad habit. Make the call, step forward, but somehow you keep circling the decision. You analyze, rationalize, postpone. You tell yourself you're waiting for the right time, the right sign, the right feeling. But deep down, you know the truth, you're stuck in negotiation with yourself. The mind becomes a courtroom where excuses argue against potential everything, and each day that passes is another day of silent surrender. The power of decision is about ending that endless debate, everything. It's about silencing the inner lawyer who always finds a reason why today isn't the day. Because here's the truth, your life changes the instant you decide. Not when you plan, everything. Not when you wish, but when you decide. Think of the word decision. It comes from the Latin root decidere, meaning to cut off. To decide is to cut off every other possibility, everything. To burn the ships behind you so there is no way back. But that's where most people hesitate, the cutting off part. We want to move forward, but we also want to keep our options open, everything. We want change without commitment, growth without sacrifice. And that's why most people stay in the same place for years. Halfway committed, halfway dreaming, everything. There's a story about a general who led his army to a foreign land. When they arrived, he ordered his men to burn their ships. As the fire roared behind them, he turned and said, "Everything. We either win or we perish." With no way back, every man fought with unshakable focus. They didn't have a choice. They had decided. That's what a real decision does. Everything. It removes the escape routes. It forces all your energy, focus, and willpower into one direction. When you stop negotiating, you stop leaking energy. Everything. You become a single force of movement instead of a divided storm of thoughts. Most of us underestimate how much energy we lose through indecision. Every time you hesitate, everything, you drain mental power. You might not notice it, but the background noise of, should I, shouldn't I, maybe later, eats away at your confidence. You scroll through options, everything. You compare paths, you seek reassurance. And by the end of it, you feel exhausted, not from doing anything, but from thinking about doing something. The relief comes the moment you decide, everything. Suddenly, the noise quiets down. There's no longer 100 possibilities, just one, and that clarity is liberating, everything. Think about the moments in your life when you made a firm decision, a real one. Maybe it was the moment you decided to leave a toxic relationship, everything. Or the day you decided to stop making excuses and start working on your health. Or the instant you said, "I'm done being afraid." Remember how everything felt clearer afterward, everything. That wasn't coincidence. That was the mental storm calming because you took command. Decision is leadership over yourself. Let me tell you about a young man named Adam. For years, everything. He dreamed of starting his own design business. He'd talk about it to anyone who would listen. He'd plan, research, sketch ideas, but he never launched, everything. There was always a reason. Not enough savings, not enough skill, not enough time. Until one night, after another long day at a job he hated, he came home, stared at his reflection, everything, and said out loud, "I'm doing it, no matter what." It wasn't a loud declaration. It was quiet but final. He registered his business the next morning. He had no logo, no clients, everything, and no clue how it would work. But that one decision changed his posture, his energy, his attitude. Within months, he had his first clients. Within a year, he had a growing company, everything. When I asked him what made the difference, he said something simple. Before that night, I kept asking if. After that night, I started asking how. That's the power of decision, everything. It changes your questions. Once you decide, you stop asking whether something is possible and start figuring out how to make it real. Decision replaces doubt with direction. The truth is everything. Every great achievement begins with a line drawn in the sand. A moment where you say, "No more negotiation." You can't build momentum while standing on the fence. Everything. Indecision is like trying to start a car with one foot on the gas and the other on the brake. The engine roars, but you go nowhere. Action requires commitment. Everything. Commitment begins with decision. Now, you might be thinking, what if I make the wrong decision? That's one of the most common fears that keeps people stuck. But the truth is, everything. The wrong decision is almost always better than no decision. Because even a wrong move gets you moving. It teaches you, it redirects you, it builds your resilience. Everything. You can't steer a parked car. Once you're in motion, even mistakes become part of your progress. Let's take a real-world example. Think about entrepreneurs, athletes, everything, or artists who made bold decisions before they felt ready. Steve Jobs decided to build a company in a garage. Serena Williams decided to train like a champion long before she was one. Everything. Every person who's done something meaningful made a choice before certainty existed. The path didn't become clear until they started walking it. Everything. Waiting for clarity before deciding is like waiting for heat before lighting the fire. There's another kind of decision, the micro-decision, the ones you make daily. Everything. To wake up when the alarm rings instead of hitting snooze. To go for the run even when you don't feel like it. To open the book instead of the app. Everything. These tiny decisions may not look dramatic, but they compound. Every small act of commitment strengthens your identity as someone who acts instead of delays. Over time, everything. You start to trust yourself. You stop doubting whether you'll follow through, because you know you will. You see, self-trust is built one decision at a time. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, even a small one, your inner voice grows stronger. Everything. But every time you break it, when you say you'll start tomorrow and don't, you weaken that trust. And without self-trust, discipline feels impossible. Everything. That's why ending mental negotiation is so crucial. It's not just about efficiency, it's about integrity. When your words and actions align, your confidence becomes unshakable. Everything. Imagine waking up tomorrow and deciding that from this moment, you will no longer negotiate with yourself. Everything. No more 5 more minutes. No more, maybe next week. When you say you'll do something, it's done. How different would your life look in 6 months? In a year? Everything. That's the hidden miracle of decision. It compounds. One decision today reshapes countless moments tomorrow. The real struggle isn't making a plan, it's closing the door behind it. Everything. Decision is closure. It's saying, this is it, and meaning it. It's deleting the backup plan, unfollowing the distractions. Everything. Removing the what-ifs. It's giving your full self to one path and refusing to look back. That's where your true power begins, when your energy is no longer divided. Everything. You don't need perfect confidence to decide. You just need a spark of courage. Confidence is built after the decision, not before. Think of a diver standing at the edge of a platform. Everything. The courage to jump doesn't come from certainty. It comes from faith. The faith that you'll find your rhythm on the way down. Life rewards those who jump. Everything, not those who keep measuring the height. And yet, most people live in a loop of hesitation. They overthink every move, waiting for an emotional green light that never comes. Everything. They want to feel ready before they act, not realizing that readiness is a byproduct of action. When you decide, you generate readiness. You activate a part of your brain that says, everything. This is happening. Suddenly, you see opportunities, connections, solutions that weren't visible before, because your focus has sharpened. When your mind stops fighting itself, everything. Something magical happens. Peace, not the kind of peace that comes from comfort, but from clarity. You finally know where your energy is going. Everything. You're no longer carrying the weight of indecision. You move lighter, think clearer, and act faster. And ironically, that's when life begins to respond to you. Because the universe, everything, in its own mysterious way, seems to favor those who have made up their mind. Every decisive person you admire, from leaders to creators to everyday heroes, has one thing in common. Everything. They end internal debates quickly. They don't waste time convincing themselves to do what must be done. They decide and they act. That's not recklessness. That's mastery. Everything. They know that hesitation is the enemy of progress. So ask yourself right now, what decision have you been postponing? What dream has been sitting on the shelf of someday? Everything. What part of your life is still waiting for your permission to begin? The moment you decide, the moment you say, this is happening, you'll feel it. That surge of relief, everything, that rush of certainty. Because finally your mind and your will are no longer pulling in opposite directions. Decision doesn't just move your life forward. It aligns your soul. Everything. It's the moment your words, thoughts, and actions unite toward one purpose. And when that happens, the impossible begins to bend in your favor. Everything. Imagine waking up one morning and feeling absolutely nothing. No spark, no excitement, no surge of motivation to conquer the day. You glance at your phone, scroll for a while. Everything. Maybe watch a video or two about success, discipline, or productivity. For a moment, it lights a little fire. You think, yes, today I'll start. Today I'll change. But then, everything. Hours later, that same spark fades, and you find yourself back where you started, stuck between intention and inaction. We've all been there. Everything. And here's the truth most people never tell you: motivation is a liar. It whispers promises it rarely keeps. It shows up when things are easy, when energy is high. Everything. When the path feels smooth. But the moment life gets uncomfortable, motivation disappears, leaving you stranded with nothing but your excuses. The people who change their lives, everything. who build something meaningful, aren't the ones who wait to feel ready. They're the ones who learn how to move, especially when they don't feel like it. Everything. Motion is the true trigger of progress. It's not the result of motivation. It's the cause of it. You don't move because you feel inspired. You feel inspired because you move. Everything. Once you understand this simple but powerful truth, your entire relationship with effort changes. You stop waiting for the perfect mood, and you start mastering momentum. Everything. Think of it this way: motivation is like a spark. It can ignite something beautiful, but without fuel, it fades in seconds. Momentum, on the other hand, everything, is the fire that keeps burning once you get it going. It doesn't need to be intense. It just needs to stay alive. Every small action, every step, everything. Every ounce of effort you take adds to that flame. There's a story about a writer who struggled for years to complete his first book. He'd spend days waiting for inspiration, everything, convincing himself he needed the right mindset to create great work. Then, one day, in frustration, he decided to write for just 10 minutes. No expectations, no pressure, just motion, everything. Something strange happened. 10 minutes became 20, then an hour, and before he knew it, he had written several pages. Everything. That single act broke the illusion that he needed to feel inspired to create. From that day forward, he stopped waiting and started writing every single day, no matter how he felt. Everything. The book was finished within months. That's the power of motion. The hardest part is always starting. Once you begin, resistance loses its grip. Everything. Psychologists call this the activation energy of behavior, the initial push required to overcome inertia. Everything. Just as a car takes more energy to start moving from a stop than to keep rolling once it's in motion, your brain works the same way. Once you take that first small step, everything, your mental gears start turning, and the energy you thought you lacked begins to appear. Your brain loves momentum. When you act, even in tiny ways, everything, it releases dopamine, the chemical associated with reward and progress. What's fascinating is that dopamine doesn't just come from achieving a goal, it comes from moving toward it. Everything. That's why you feel good after cleaning one drawer, going for a quick walk, or sending a single email you've been putting off. You've triggered your brain's reward system, everything, which then fuels more action. In other words, the more you move, the more motivated you become. But here's the trap: most people wait to feel motivated before they act. Everything. They sit in the waiting room of life, expecting inspiration to knock on their door. The problem is, it rarely does. Action is the invitation, movement is what brings motivation to the party. Everything. Once you start, motivation shows up, not before. Let me tell you about a young man named Daniel. For years, Daniel dreamed of getting in shape. Every January, he'd sign up for the gym. Everything. Buy new clothes, watch fitness videos, and tell himself, "This time I'm serious." But after a few weeks, he'd quit. He thought his problem was discipline, but in truth, everything. It was momentum. He was chasing motivation instead of building movement. One day, Daniel made a decision: no more waiting for motivation. Everything. He told himself he'd just put on his shoes and step outside every morning. That's it. No commitment to a full workout, no pressure. Just put the shoes on. For the first few days, everything. He'd laugh at how small it seemed, but something shifted. Once he was outside, he started walking. Some days he'd jog. Within a month, it became automatic. Everything. What used to feel like effort became routine. His body changed, but more importantly, his identity changed. He was no longer someone trying to work out. He was someone who moves. Everything. That's what momentum does. It transforms effort into identity. The more you move, the more you see yourself as someone who takes action. Everything. And that self-image becomes fuel for everything else. You stop questioning, you stop negotiating, and you just do. So, everything. How do you start when you feel completely stuck? When your energy is low, your willpower is gone, and every cell in your body wants to delay. The answer is deceptively simple: lower the bar. Everything. Start so small it feels impossible to fail. Want to write a book? Write one sentence. Want to get fit? Do one push-up. Want to clean your house? Start with one corner. Everything. The goal isn't to achieve, it's to begin. The beauty of starting small is that it bypasses resistance. Your brain can't argue with just one. And once you do one, everything, it's easier to do another. That's how momentum sneaks in. A single action becomes a rhythm, and rhythm becomes routine. Everything. When you watch people who seem effortlessly productive, those who wake up early, build businesses, create art, everything, or stay consistent year after year, it's not because they're more motivated than you. It's because they've trained their minds to move without permission. Everything. They've built systems around action, not emotion. They understand that waiting for motivation is like waiting for the wind to blow in your direction. You might wait forever. Everything. Think of motion as the lever that shifts everything. When you're anxious, move. When you're lost, move. When you're tired of thinking, planning, analyzing, move. Everything. You don't have to see the entire path. You only need to take the next step. Because here's what happens when you move: your mind clears, your confidence grows, and your energy multiplies. Everything. Momentum is powerful because it compounds. The first step is the hardest, but every step that follows gets easier. And eventually, what once felt impossible becomes your new normal. Everything. There's a concept in physics called inertia, which means an object in motion tends to stay in motion. Human beings are the same. Once you create forward movement, everything, it takes much less energy to keep going than to start again after stopping. That's why consistency matters more than intensity. Everything. A small daily effort beats a massive burst of energy followed by burnout every single time. When you begin to move, even slightly, your perspective changes. Everything. You start seeing progress instead of problems. You begin to feel alive again. Because motion isn't just about productivity, it's about purpose. Everything. It reconnects you with your own capability. It reminds you that you're not powerless, that change is always possible, that life responds to movement. Everything. There will be days when you don't feel like doing anything. Those are the most important days to move. Because on those days, everything. You're not just building habits, you're building resilience. You're proving to yourself that you don't need the perfect conditions to take action. Everything. And that proof becomes unshakable confidence. Every time you move despite resistance, you strengthen the muscle of self-trust. You begin to believe in your own follow-through. Everything. That belief becomes the foundation for every future victory. So, stop asking, how do I get motivated? And start asking, everything. What's the smallest action I can take right now? Because that action, no matter how small, has the power to change everything. You don't need motivation to begin. You need motion. Everything. The movement itself creates the feeling you've been waiting for. Once you start, you awaken something deep inside. The part of you that remembers who you are and what you're capable of. Everything. And maybe, just maybe, all you've been missing wasn't motivation at all. It was momentum, pain, pressure, discomfort. These are the words most people run from. Everything. The moment life starts to squeeze us, the instinct is to escape, to find relief, to retreat back into safety. Everything. But what if I told you that the very pressure you're trying to avoid is the exact force that shapes your greatness? That every struggle, every moment of fear, everything, every sleepless night filled with doubt is not breaking you, it's building you. We live in a world addicted to comfort. We want everything fast, smooth, painless. Everything. We celebrate ease and convenience as if they're signs of success. But comfort doesn't create change. Growth demands discomfort. It's the law of the universe. Everything. Diamonds are born from pressure, muscles are built through resistance, and character is forged in the fire of struggle. Think about the gym. Everything. The moment you pick up a weight that's too light, your body barely responds. There's no challenge, no adaptation. But when you lift something heavy, when your arms shake, everything, when your body screams, stop, that's when transformation begins. Pain isn't the enemy there. It's the signal that you're growing stronger. The same applies to life. Everything. The challenges you face, the emotional weight you carry are not punishments. They are pressure systems designed to expand you. Most people misinterpret pain. Everything. They see it as evidence that something's wrong, when in reality, it's proof that something real is happening. When you feel the sting of failure, the tension of uncertainty, everything, the ache of loss, that's life's way of stretching you into someone more capable, more resilient, more aware. Pain is not here to crush you. It's here to teach you. Everything. Let's look at fear for a moment. Fear at its core is just energy, raw potential trapped behind a wall of what-ifs. We tend to treat fear like a stop sign. Everything. But if you lean in close enough, fear isn't saying, stop. It's whispering, this matters. You don't fear the meaningless. Everything. You only fear the things that have power, the dreams, the opportunities, the changes that could redefine you. Fear is simply excitement that's holding its breath. The question is, everything. What do you do when fear shows up? Most people freeze. They analyze, hesitate, or distract themselves until the moment passes. Everything. But those who win, those who grow, are the ones who move toward the discomfort. They don't wait for the fear to fade. They act despite it. Because every time you move through fear, you reclaim a piece of your power. Let me tell you a story. There was once a young man who dreamed of becoming a speaker. Every time he stood in front of a crowd, his throat tightened, his palms would sweat, his voice trembled. He failed again and again, humiliated in front of people he wanted to inspire. He thought maybe he just wasn't cut out for it. But deep down, he knew he couldn't run forever. So instead of avoiding the pressure, he leaned into it. He started speaking to empty rooms, practicing until his fear became familiar. He spoke when his voice shook. He spoke when his stomach turned. And slowly, something remarkable happened. The pressure didn't disappear. He just got stronger. That young man was me, years ago. And I learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision that something else matters more. Pressure reveals what you're made of. It tests your patience, your persistence, your commitment. It strips away the superficial and exposes the truth. Do you really want what you say you want? Because if you do, pressure will ask you to prove it. It will push you past your limits, not to break you, but to introduce you to who you truly are when excuses no longer have power. The truth is, you can't develop resilience by reading about it. You can't build mental toughness from the comfort of a soft couch. You earn it through the grind, through rejection, through failure, through the nights when you wonder if it's worth it. Those are the moments that forge the version of you that doesn't quit. Let's talk about failure. Most people treat failure as final, as if it's a door slamming shut. But failure is simply feedback. It's data from life telling you what doesn't work so you can discover what does. The greatest achievers in history, Edison, Jordan, Oprah, Jobs, they didn't avoid failure. They harvested it. Every misstep became a lesson, every rejection a redirection, They learned to translate pain into information. That's the difference between those who rise and those who retreat, how they interpret the pain. Imagine a blacksmith forging a blade. The metal begins as something ordinary, shapeless, dull, raw. It's placed in the fire, pounded, cooled, and reheated again. Over and over, it's exposed to heat and pressure. If the metal could speak, it would probably beg for the process to stop. But without that pressure, without that flame, it would never become the sword it's meant to be. The same is true for you. Life's heat is refining you, not destroying you. You have to stop asking for an easy path. Stop praying for the load to be lighter. Instead, ask to become stronger. Because the truth is, pressure doesn't create weakness. It exposes it. It shows you where you need to grow. It teaches you how to rely on your purpose when everything else feels uncertain. And purpose is what transforms pain from chaos into clarity. When you have a strong enough, why pain becomes bearable. Think about it. A mother in labor endures hours of agony, yet she doesn't quit because she knows what that pain is bringing forth. The purpose gives meaning to the suffering. The same principle applies to your dreams. The question isn't, can you handle the pressure? The question is, do you care enough to handle it? There will be days when the world feels heavy, when you question your path, when you feel like you're breaking down. But remember this, breaking down and breaking through often feel the same in the moment. The difference is what you choose to believe. You can see your pain as punishment, or you can see it as preparation. One mindset creates victims, the other creates warriors. And here's something I've learned. The people who grow the most are not the ones with the least pain. They're the ones who decide that pain will not be wasted. They channel it. They use it as energy. The heartbreak becomes empathy. The rejection becomes focus. The failure becomes experience. When you learn to recycle your pain, you become unstoppable. You might be going through something right now, something that feels too big, too unfair, too heavy. Maybe life hit you hard. Maybe you're tired of starting over. Maybe you've been carrying a weight no one sees. But I want you to understand something deeply. This season isn't here to destroy you. It's here to train you. You're being conditioned for a future that requires this strength. The pressure you feel now is the exact pressure that will make success feel earned later. So, the next time you face discomfort, don't retreat. Don't label it as bad. Lean into it. Breathe through it. Ask yourself, what is this trying to teach me? There's always a lesson hidden beneath the surface. Maybe it's patience. Maybe it's self-belief. Maybe it's learning to trust the process even when it doesn't make sense. Everything. If you can shift your perspective, if you can see pain as your teacher instead of your tormentor, everything changes. Suddenly, every challenge becomes an opportunity for growth. Everything. Every setback becomes a setup for something greater. You start realizing that the pain you once hated is the same energy that propels you forward. Here's a truth few people accept. Everything. You don't rise to your goals. You fall to your standards. And standards are built in discomfort. Every time you keep your promise to yourself when it's inconvenient, everything. You raise your standard. Every time you show up tired, scared, or uncertain but still move forward, you rewrite your identity. Everything. That's the power of pressure. It reveals your capacity for greatness. You can't avoid the storm, but you can learn to dance in the rain. The winds of struggle will blow regardless. Everything. What matters is how you face them. Will you hide behind fear, or will you let the storm make you stronger? Remember, pressure doesn't last forever, but the strength it leaves behind does. Everything. And one day, maybe sooner than you think, you'll look back at the pain that once felt unbearable and realize it was the best thing that ever happened to you. Because it woke you up. Everything. It stripped away your illusions. It forced you to grow. It made you powerful. You'll understand that pain was never your enemy. It was your coach, your sculptor. Everything. Your silent partner in transformation. And every ounce of discomfort you've endured has been carving you into someone capable of carrying your dreams with strength, purpose, and grace. Everything. Discipline is not punishment. It's freedom disguised as structure. It's the quiet force that allows ordinary people to do extraordinary things, not because they feel like it, everything, but because they've built themselves to act, regardless of how they feel. Think about it. Every dreamer starts with vision, but only the disciplined ever cross the finish line. Everything. This chapter isn't about hype. It's about transformation, that invisible line between who you are and who you're becoming. The line that only consistent action can cross. Everything. Most people misunderstand discipline. They see it as restriction, something that takes the fun out of life. But in truth, discipline doesn't take away your freedom. It creates it. Everything. Imagine two people. One hits snooze 5 times, the other gets up at the first alarm. One eats whatever they crave, the other follows a plan. One reacts to life, the other builds it. Everything. Which of the two do you think feels more in control? Which one moves closer to their dream? Discipline isn't about perfection. It's about power. The power to do what needs to be done. Everything. Especially when you don't want to. There's a moment in everyone's life when excuses sound louder than ambition. You'll tell yourself, everything. I'll start when I have more time, or once I feel ready. But discipline doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't bargain or negotiate. It moves, and in that movement, everything. The rest of your life rearranges itself around your commitment. Think about an athlete training for years before a single championship. Every early morning, every sore muscle, everything, every repetition. None of it glamorous, but all of it essential. Discipline isn't found in the spotlight. It's forged in the shadows. Everything. In the moments when no one's watching and you still choose to show up. Let's be honest, motivation fades. It's an emotional spark, not a system. Everything. You can't rely on feeling motivated every morning. But discipline is the bridge between emotion and execution. It's what carries you through the days when the fire inside feels dim. Everything. The disciplined person doesn't chase motivation, they generate it through motion. They act first and the feeling follows. That's the secret most people miss. Everything. If you want to feel inspired, take action. If you want to feel confident, act confidently. The body leads, the mind follows. I remember a story of a man who decided to transform his life. Everything. Deeply unhappy and trapped in cycles of procrastination, he made a simple decision to walk 1 mile every day, not 10 miles. Just one. The first week was agony. Everything. He hated it, but he did it anyway. Then 1 mile became 2. 2 became a run. Months later, he didn't have to convince himself anymore. It was just what he did. Everything. That's how habits are born, not from massive change, but from small, consistent, repeated action. The miracle of discipline is that it turns effort into instinct. Everything. You don't become disciplined overnight. You become disciplined one choice at a time. Each decision to act when you could have delayed adds a layer to your identity. Everything. You start to see yourself differently. You're no longer someone who trees to wake up early. You're someone who does. Everything. You're no longer someone who wants to write a book. You're someone who writes. Over time, your habits stop being something you do and start becoming who you are. Everything. That's the essence of the discipline code, turning consistent action into identity. Discipline is built through self-respect. Everything. You can't keep breaking promises to yourself and expect confidence to grow. Every time you tell yourself you'll do something and you don't, your subconscious learns not to trust you. Everything. But when you follow through, even in small ways, that trust builds. You begin to believe yourself again. Everything. You start to move from, "I hope I can," to, "I know I will." That shift changes everything. When your word becomes law in your own life, you become unstoppable. Everything. But let's not romanticize discipline. It's hard. It's uncomfortable. There are mornings you'll hate it, days you'll question it. Everything. You'll feel the pull to quit. And that's exactly when discipline is tested. Anyone can keep going when it's easy. True growth happens when you keep going when it's not. Everything. The hardest part of any journey isn't starting. It's continuing. It's waking up every day and choosing the same effort, again and again, even when progress seems invisible. Everything. But that's where breakthroughs happen, in the invisible phase. When nothing seems to be changing, everything is. We live in a world that glorifies results and overlooks the process. Everything. Social media shows the highlight reels, the transformation, the success, the recognition, but rarely the daily grind behind it. Everything. The discipline code demands that you fall in love with the process itself, not just the outcome. Because the process is where your character is built. Everything. If you can learn to love the grind, to find meaning in the repetition, then you've already won. There's a saying, discipline weighs ounces. Everything. Regret weighs tons. Every moment you choose comfort over commitment, you're adding weight to future regret. Everything. The pain of discipline is temporary. It's the soreness after a good workout, the fatigue after a long day of meaningful work. But the pain of regret lingers. It whispers, everything. You could have been more. The discipline code isn't about punishment, it's about choosing the lighter pain now to avoid the heavier one later. Now, think about your current life. Everything. The habits you live by right now, whether conscious or not, are shaping your destiny. Every day. Everything. You're either reinforcing the identity of the person you want to become or the person you're trying to leave behind. Ask yourself, everything. What small action today would align you with your future self? Maybe it's making your bed. Maybe it's writing that first page. Everything. Maybe it's turning off your phone and working for one focused hour. Discipline lives in those micro moments. Everything. The ones that seem too small to matter. But they're the bricks that build your empire. When you master discipline, you master your mind. You stop being a slave to feelings, impulses, everything, and distractions. You gain the rare ability to direct your focus where it matters. And in a world addicted to instant gratification, that's a superpower. Everything. The person who can delay gratification controls their destiny. The one who can persist without applause wins in the long run. Everything. Because discipline doesn't seek validation. It creates results so undeniable that validation becomes irrelevant. Sometimes people ask, how do I stay consistent? The answer is everything. Stop aiming for perfection. Discipline isn't about never missing a day. It's about never quitting entirely. You'll fall off track. Everyone does. Everything. The difference between disciplined people and everyone else is that they don't stay down. They reset quickly. Everything. They understand that missing one day doesn't ruin the mission. Quitting does. Every time you get back up, you strengthen your resilience, and that resilience compounds like interest. Everything. One of the most powerful ways to maintain discipline is through environment. Willpower is limited, but environment is constant. If you want to stay focused, everything, design your surroundings to support it. Remove distractions, create cues for action, and surround yourself with reminders of your goal. The gym bag by the door, the notebook on your desk, everything. The alarm across the room. Discipline thrives where friction is low and structure is clear. And then there's identity, the deepest level of transformation. Everything. When you truly internalize the discipline code, you no longer need to force yourself. It becomes natural, automatic. Everything. You don't run because you're trying to get fit. You run because you're a runner. You don't write because you're chasing a deadline. You write because you're a writer. Everything. You no longer need to convince yourself to act. It's simply who you are. That's the final stage, when action has become identity. It's not easy to reach this level, everything, but it's worth it. You'll start to feel a quiet strength, a confidence that comes not from what you've achieved, but from knowing that you can rely on yourself. Everything. You'll stop searching for external motivation because you'll have built an internal engine. Everything. The discipline code turns you into someone who doesn't wait for the right moment. You create it. You don't wish for opportunity. You prepare for it. Everything. There will still be days when you don't want to do it. Days when you're tired, uncertain, or uninspired. But those are the moments that define you. The voice in your head will whisper, everything. Just skip it today. And that's when you remind yourself who you are. The kind of person who acts not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Everything. When you live by the discipline code, you stop being controlled by circumstance. You take the wheel of your life. Everything. And even when storms come, because they always do, you navigate them with purpose. You may bend, but you don't break. You may slow down, but you never stop. Because discipline, everything, once earned, becomes your anchor. It grounds you when life tries to shake you, and it guides you back to your purpose every single time. That's the power of becoming unstoppable. Everything. It's not about being perfect or fearless. It's about being consistent, showing up for yourself no matter what. When action becomes habit and habit becomes identity, everything. You step into a rare class of people. The ones who don't wait for life to change, but make it change. From that moment forward, nothing and no one can hold you back.